Welcome to another edition of the Basketball Teacher Podcast. Our mission is to bring you discussions on a wide array of topics in the coaching world to grow players on and off the court. You can connect with us on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, and also reach us directly through email at basketballteacherpodcast@gmail.com. Now, here's your host, Coach Mike Hernandez.
Welcome back again, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining us wherever in the world you're listening from and on whatever platform you're listening to us on. This episode marks the 1-year anniversary of the show. It's kind of unbelievable if I really stop to think about it. I want to thank you so much as listeners for supporting the show over the past year, for the messages you've left and for the messages you've sent me. It's been tremendous, and I'm really appreciative of the fact that this podcast has done something positive for you, and it makes me really excited to get going on year 2. To celebrate, what we're going to do for this episode is play clips from every interview that I've conducted over the past year, and I hope that you enjoy. I hope you enjoy listening to some of these clips, and maybe you'll go back into the archives and listen to some of the episodes themselves. And a special thanks to all of the guests who took a shot at this podcast and were willing to be interviewed. I really appreciate the groundwork that you guys laid for the show, and I'm really excited to get going on year 2. So without further ado, let's take a look back at all of the great episodes that we had over the past year, and I'll see you guys for year 2.
I've had girls be a few degrees off on an angle for a down screen and know that they're wrong, or they just completely flub a pass and they throw something out of bounds. They do something really obviously bad. But even with really small things, at first they tend to get super dejected because they're like, oh man, they're feeling that way because they're actually growing and they're understanding why that's a problem. So being able to kind of turn that around for them and say, hey, not only is it not a big deal that you screwed up, because that's what good players do at times, but it's awesome because now where before I had to tell you and I had to explain what you did wrong and why it was wrong, and now before I need to tell you. And I think that, again, goes back to empowering them and then understanding. And then obviously we all love to see when they have tangible growth in a positive way and they see shots going in or they see how a defensive rotation works for us. But it works on the flip side as well. And I always try to encourage them, when you recognize a mistake, often that's because you're growing as a player.
Kids to learn how to play the game rather than teaching them plays, and that goes into my way of really spending a lot of quality time on those universal offensive concepts, so skill work, breaking down those things, and then again, when I implement some, I want to break it down small groups. I'm gonna say, okay, and I don't believe in positions. If for my team, I never really had a traditional big. So all my guys, we got lengthy kids, athletic. They're going to be skilled. So we're going to teach you how to play. But we're going to break down all those reads. We're going to break down those reads. Excuse me, sir. We're going to break it down and, we're going to run it. And then we might do no offense. Then we'll do 2-on-2. So a 2-action offense, we'll do 2-on-2, and then we'll break it down 3-on-3, 4-on-4, 5-on-5. Then we'll just bring them all together. And 9 times out of 10, it goes very great. And then too, what I like to do before practice, sorry, I missed a step. When I'm implementing some, I like to have film on it. I like to have.
Hey, what fits them may not fit you, so it's okay to be different. Go against what's the trend. Go against what's the norm to help give you a feeling to be successful and help your kids have a fighting chance. Because, like I said, if the teams you're playing against, if you play teams in your district twice a year like we do, they basically are preparing for you 2 to 4 days max. And if what you're doing is different than what they're seeing on a constant weekly night in, night out basis, that's going to be a struggle for them. I mean, because I remember, like I said, my buddy that coaches the flex offense where he's at, I remember when we were preparing to play for him, and I knew he was going to be the team that we had to beat in order to make the playoffs. So I started preparing for him back in November. In our shell drills and stuff, we'd have those small little things of okay, here's a part of what their offense is, of what we got to be prepared for. And And, you know, and the good coaches do that sort of thing. But, you know, if you're that program that's kind of middle of the road, not one of the top notch district, well, they're not necessarily going to be doing that for you early. So they're having a short prepare time for you, which kind of gives you that advantage.
And so I found that it's super, super important as a middle school coach to try to build relationships with your players. As I said, they're still growing, so they're very impressionable. So if you can build those relationships and, you know, just be a positive influence in their life, be a mentor both on the court and off the court to them, they're definitely going to benefit from that much more than they would someone who is just strictly a basketball coach. One quote that I always love to tell my players, Phil Jackson said, not only is there more to life than basketball, but there's more to basketball than basketball. And so it takes a little while for my players to understand what that means. But what I take away from that quote is that, you know, we can come out here and win games, and we can come out here and, you know, everything on the court matters, but the stuff that's off the court matters more.
You know, when those kids realize, you know, we're here for the same reason, we all want to play at the next level. How do we achieve that goal together while maintaining a little bit of individuality, you know, in the way that we get recruited and things like that? But I'm going to go my hardest because it might get an open shot for somebody else that's playing in front of a coach that's recruiting them. You know, so when you can get a roster that's, you know, buys into the same goal of, hey, we all want to play in college, we're all here for the same reasons, the families are on the same page, you know, we need to do everything we can to make each other look good, then, you know, that speaks for itself. That goes a really long way. And, you know, I'll say that the kids have to be self-motivated too. You know, the worst thing that we can do is get a kid in our program that isn't willing to reach out to coaches or just expects, you know, their parents or their coaches to do everything.
I think it's a great advantage as a coach to have some of their best sets memorized. I think back on my time this past year. We're in the playoffs, and I heard them call box, and I instantly knew what box meant, and I knew what play box was, and I'm shouting instructions from the sideline. You know, watch the cross screen, down screen, Billy, he's coming off the staggered, follow him. You know what I mean? And when you do that sort of stuff at the high school level, I think the benefit more so than my team responding appropriately is you give the other team some spooks. Early on in the game, you know, you usually get one guy who kind of looks over at the bench like, oh no, he knows our stuff. You know? and I think some of those mind games are good to have, and just kind of point those things out. Like, I'll kind of give him a nod like, yeah, I'm ready for you. Like, come on, man, bring it on.
You know, we eat together. It's just, I feel like teams are made in the off season, and girls are already such an interesting dynamic with girls that if you don't get them to buy in and to be like in the summer, you're not going to build a team in 3 weeks in your preseason. Right. You're not. Yeah. And these girls these days are not me. You know, back in the day, you can say whatever you want to them. You know, you don't have to interact with them. You know, you can scream and yell at them. It's a totally different, they're a totally different type now. And it's taken me time. We have strength and conditioning Monday through Thursday. I don't go. No. Our strength coach, Coach Brian, said they have a better workout when you're not there. I said, okay, I'm not going anymore. And it's extremely improved and been more efficient. So I think that you have to at times give up some control. You're not handicapping your program. Like, I'm not going to not go and let things fall apart, but you have to trust the people around you, and you have to allow you have to give them a bone at some point.
I was basically the person who was just told, okay, set up the cones and then come to the sideline. And I was basically almost like I was just setting up the cones for everybody else, and I wasn't actually learning anything or doing anything. And I felt like, why am I going to all these practices for me to just be like the assistant? And so because of that feeling, when I was finally kind of getting into that team structure with the new girls and having a full-on team now, and it wasn't just tryouts, it was the actual practices, because of the way that had happened with that coach, I wasn't comfortable to begin with, but then because we also had new girls on the team, I felt like I was just not quite there because I wasn't practicing with them and I wasn't getting to know them very much because I was on the sideline. So I felt like the girls didn't understand me, the coaches didn't understand me, and then at a point where I was finally ready to go back on the field after my ankle had healed, I was feeling the anxiety that I had felt in 6th grade with the sleepovers.
See the focus, and boys want to win, and when a defense does not go the right way, right away we're all thinking, oh, we got to switch defenses, we got to do something. And so in the past, trial and error, I wasn't always committed to my own strategies at times, which is a big no-no for coaches. I think everybody knows that. But on the other hand, I also found out as a result of the last season is I know the pack line defense works. I didn't run it as much last year, and that's probably why we got eliminated in the playoffs, because I feel if we would have ran it more, we probably would have gone further. But now I know for next year, this is what I want. So trial and error, I feel like in my journey, I found the strategies that, I want to implement moving forward. And I now see the type of coach that I want to be moving forward.
But actually one thing that starts for us, and I mean, you could come into my gym right now and I wouldn't be there, and you could just ask the guys, what's the one thing Coach K says about rebounding? And they'll probably all say to you, the piranha pit. And what I mean by that is, if you truly look at most high school gyms, and the same would go for the pro game, it would probably be more of the restricted circle area. But in a high school gym, most of the time there's a volleyball line that cuts right across kind of the bottom third of the lane. And if you ever watch a basketball game enough, if you look at, there's kind of a rectangle that the lane and that volleyball line makes, very, very, very rarely do the rebounds fall in there. If they do, they're the ones that maybe catch just a little bit of the front of the rim and they come straight down. But if you ever watch a high school game, where do most of the athletes go running? As soon as a shot goes up, they run into the area.
Yep.
So we teach our kids right away, and I have young kids. I'll have it this fall where some of our incoming freshmen, some of our younger kids, as soon as the shot goes up, they're just going to go running in there because that's where they think the rebounds are going to go. And our older guys, they'll stay outside the piranha pit and they'll be grabbing rebound after rebound after rebound. And those young guys will be like, I just can't get a rebound.
And so whenever I talk to parents, I'm like, listen, it is an unconditional positive regard and focus. You made the financial choice before your kid had an opportunity to do so. You made that financial choice.
Yeah.
Sometimes they're going to do well, sometimes they're not going to do well, but you need to unconditionally positive regard for them. Absolutely. And as a parent, even more so, because you don't know the messages that they're getting from other people. You don't know if their coach is interacting with them in a way, or if there are certain people on their team, and this happens, that talk to them when they do well or don't talk to them when they don't. So as a parent, you not only have to send that message to them from you, but you basically have to then overcompensate for what other messages that they may be getting about their utility as a human being from other people based on how they're doing athletically.
Yeah.
Well, I, as a coach, am always fine for my players to challenge me. In terms of pure basketball, if I say, okay, we're going to go over here, dribble handoff, screen here, blah, 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 and they say, oh, what's the point of that? Why can't we just do it this way? I'm fine for a player to do that, but I've seen other coaches kind of, if a player dares to question them, they take it as a personal insult and they'll get riled up and kind of go off at the player for that. I personally, as a coach, I enjoy that. It shows that the player's thinking. It shows that the player's willing to question me as someone who does, if we're being straight up, have kind of authority over them. I think that's a wonderful thing. If a high school aged kid can talk to a fully grown man and say, I think you might be a little bit wrong with this, I think that's going to really take a player far. So yeah, really building that environment that players are comfortable in and comfortable and willing to be wrong.
Is that why do you guys scrimmage so much? And why do you scrimmage your JV? What good do you get out of scrimmaging your JV? And what we're talking about right now is a great example of what we get out of that, is that we get those scenarios in live action every day of pressing after a miss. that you can't create in a drill. There's just no way to create those things in an organized practice drill. The only way to get repetitions is to toss it up and play. And so our guys every day, one thing we know is we're going to scrimmage every single day live. And it may only be a quarter or 2 quarters, but we're going to go live. And so our guys get so many repetitions where they learn how to cover for each other. They learn, okay, I got to stay here and stop the ball right now, and then I'll get to my press spot as soon as I get an opportunity. And so our guys really, really do a good job of understanding, when it's time to make sure I'm in the right spot and when it's time to just react and play, I guess would be the best way to put it.
Look to see, okay, is there more to this? And then if it seems to be paralyzing, like they literally, like let's say you have a basketball game and they literally just can't go onto the court because they're having a panic attack or something, that's when, more steps need to be taken. But I think it's also helpful to talk to the people in the kid's life, like their teachers and their parents, because usually anxiety disorders are characterized by being present in more than one location in a child's life. And so talking to those other people can help clarify what may just be something like, nervousness or jitters before a game, and what could actually be something more serious.
I've been on around 5 to 6 Zoom calls this summer with athletes from America that have expressed interest just through finding our program through maybe recruitment agencies that help with this process, or maybe just online, just through research. So when I had these calls, I'm straight honest, and I said, I can't offer scholarships. This is what we have. And someone once told me, do these athletes get quite surprised when they come to your gym, which, they played at these NCAA gyms where it's got bleachers and, great flooring and all these facilities. I said, well, ultimately they're here for their education and they're here to play basketball. And if they have that mindset, then I can help them and we can work together. So the athletes that I've had, I'll be honest, they've been amazing. So I've had 3 key athletes throughout the past 3 years, 1 from a D2 program, 2 from D3. And I've had the FaceTime calls as I mentioned to you, and I'm straight up honest with them. And I always tell them that we don't have the facilities, especially we compete at the high levels now. I actually refer them to the other universities. I say the other universities have more links to pro teams than I do, but if you come to Westminster, I can still help you on that end. We can.
After that, a 3-point shot was put up, and it went in, and then the kid came in late and boxed him. Basically did not let him come down to the ground safely.
Yeah.
But it was almost instantaneous. He made that contact. It was not a safe play. It was a foul, and he made the 3-point shot right after that, and they got the 1 free throw. And he brought me over. He coached me in high school, and he had actually taken on a new head coaching job. And we're really good buddies now. He's one of the couple teachers I still talk to outside of in college now. But he goes to me, he's like, so he is going to complain to you about that call, and then you go and give him 2 calls down here. And I said, no, that's not what I'm about. And then we were talking after the game. He's like, oh, I was just testing you or whatever. And as much as I love him, he can't be doing that stuff, because he does that to another young official. What's going to happen then? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They're going to start thinking, their minds are going to start grinding gears, and then they're not going to be into the game, and you're not going to get consistent calls.
Yeah.
So, I think it's something that coaches need to stop doing, because I think it's ultimately driving away officials, and it might drive them away from your game too.
But there are other parents on the other team who are nitpicking every single detail, kick with your right foot, not your left foot. What are you doing aiming for that corner? I don't know. And the parents that come up with excuses over and over and over, in my opinion, tend to be hurting their students or their children, because sometimes you just have a bad play. Sometimes you're playing a team that's just better than you, and no excuse is going to make that any different. Yeah. What does make the difference, though, is letting your son or daughter know, hey, were you working to your highest ability? If not, what do we need to do to get you to your highest ability? Are you finding a way to overcome this challenge? There is a challenge in front of you that the team is better than you. How are you going to overcome that? Right. So when you have a knucklehead parent or a parent that is kind of sabotaging, it's a missed opportunity for that kid to then see that as an opportunity for growth. And that's where coaches come in. And that's where we can teach our athletes that grit that's needed to say, hey, you don't have it right now, but let's work next week. Let's work on these skills so that when you play them again, you're ready.
And what I tell my coaches to do and what I do is I reward my guys, my bigs, for running if they don't get the bucket. So for example, we'll say our first big down, he's rim running, putting pressure on the rim. Well, that opens up maybe a trailer 3 because they've scored once or twice and now they're drawing attention in the paint, and then that creates an open opportunity for a teammate. Or they're rim running, they get a post touch. We've got a big that's getting triple team now, and he's able to kick it back out, right, and get an open 3 look for a teammate. So I try to praise them as much as possible when they run, even if they don't get rewarded. And then I'll go to my point guards or my ball handlers and say, hey, you missed them. Did you see him? Why didn't you hit him? So I try to put the question back on them. And if they just say, I honestly didn't see him, then they know right there that, hey, I got to give them a look. Trying to pose questions to them as opposed to just blowing the whistle and screaming at them, I'm finding out they learn a lot better that way. In college, they could get on you pretty quick, and it's a little different environment as far as practices go, but in a high school setting, I try to whisper that criticism to them or show it to them on film, and then I'll praise my guys just for running.
But I came back to, as a new head coach, I felt like I had a pretty talented group. I felt like something that extreme, if it didn't work, man, that would be a short tenure for myself. So I needed to find something that I still wanted to play fast, provide a little bit of structure, make it enjoyable. And I feel like, as for girls basketball, those that come and watch us play or see the girls game, it's actually an enjoyable game to come watch. There's such a misperception about watching girls hoops, and I think we've really helped encourage that. We draw pretty well at Lake Stevens and have a pretty good, following. But ultimately, it's because I think we've made it, and I like to think we've made it enjoyable to come see. It's not just a really big struggle to watch. We have kids that walk like, wow, your girls really can play the game, and score it, and parents appreciate it, and so on and so forth. And you put all those things that are in play, and for a lot of girls teams that maybe struggle to score, you can have an off night and still, if you're creating a ton of possessions, you're still more times than not going to put yourself in situations to win compared to maybe a limited possession type of game. So,
what I typically do to help teams focus in on what's important to them is I have an activity that I do in my therapy group sometimes where we kind of go back to like grade school where we like trace a turkey hand and each finger I have them like rate what are their top 5 traits that they appreciate in a friend. And then in the palm, they rate how do they want to feel in that friendship. Because the traits they can be changeable. They're not so like set in stone, but it's that feeling that's going to let you know if this is a friendship that I want to continue or if it's not working, why is that? And I talk a lot about how people aren't necessarily toxic. It's usually the relationship dynamic, and it's honing in on that feeling that's going to let you know what else is not working and if it's something that can be worked on and improved or not.
I don't get anybody mired in the post. With positionless basketball, you got to be willing to, follow in that field. Say, I want this girl who's normally a post to be out here to try to dribble the ball in and score. Because I want her to develop. Because there's, like in particular, one girl is on the team. They say, oh, she's a great post player. She got 100 offensive rebounds last season. That's even with a couple games where the stats weren't kept up, so who knows how many she got total in the season, which is pretty impressive for a 7th grader. But I want her to also be able to attack the rim, from different angles. Maybe she's not going to attack it from the 3-point line. Maybe she's only going to attack it from the free throw line or whatever.
Yeah.
So there are things that I don't want them to get settled into, because my job is to develop them as players, I think, more so at this level, and let the high school, especially varsity, worry about winning and putting them in certain positions.
Than you do. So I tried really hard to not give too many opinions about the state of things. If he had a question, I would answer it honestly. But I wanted him to make his mark on the program. And again, my job as an assistant is to be loyal and to, back up and support the vision of the head coach. And I think that that's the most important thing. And so, and I know because of the situation that what was going on, and nothing bad, but they wanted something, they wanted a change. And so me spouting out about everything that had been going on isn't going to help with the change. Like, he needs to implement his program. And so I just started supporting him from there. And as I said, over the last 4 years, we've become great friends. I consider him a mentor to me. And it's been really good just because, I listened. I listened to what he wanted. I answered questions, like I said, honestly, and we've rolled from there.
But getting those kind of human nature things out there, and just remembering that they are who they are at the end of the day. That's kind of what we should focus on. Don't focus on necessarily the game. The game isn't that important. There are games that are very important, and that's what you're covering, but they're not always really important. Focus on the players' personalities. Focus on how, there's a player on the team who keeps it kind of loose and playful and keeps it from getting too tense in big spots. Or, maybe that coach that has like a real fiery passion during the game for winning, not necessarily to a point where they're overly fiery, but to a point where they really, are getting the best out of their players. The results don't ultimately matter all the time. They do for standings, they do for seedings, they do for, people picking up the papers to see who won, with their alma maters or whatever, but truly showing who the kids are, what they have to offer, and what they are even off the court, I think is a valuable experience I've really gained from covering sports at this level. And I think it's something that a lot of people should focus on.
Yeah, we try, with some rare exceptions, depending on the individual, we have some no-nos. We're not a big go for shot blocks, not a big go for steals, reaching. Those are things and we break those down in film quite a bit. Yeah. And that's a pretty easy way to come out of a game, is to get beat because you're reaching, to foul somebody or be out of position to rebound because you go for a shot block. So we definitely stress the discipline part. But then when the guys start to buy in and they see that if I do my job and if I'm in the right position, I'm going to be in a position to get a steal just because I'm sitting in the middle of the lane on the weak side, and the offensive player, because my teammate is an arm's length away with his hands up mirroring the ball, and when he goes to throw the skip pass that he thinks is wide open, if I'm sitting in the middle seeing ball man, this kid I was telling my senior scorer the last few years, and he's going to head off to a Division I junior college. We're still trying to land him one because he was signed with one school that is now not having sports next year. So he's still kind of a little bit in limbo, but he realized he could get an easy 6 to 8 points a game by playing weak side defense.
There's been times, man, I use the pad and I give him a strong brush, and I'm like, come into me. Don't throw your elbow. Don't flail your forearm. Be smart about it. I want you to think what I'm asking you to do. Come at me full speed, but know how to reduce it and try to make a different move, but taking on the contact. This would allow you to do that same option if a defender is trailing you to look for the block. If you always try to do things versus speed over thought, that's how you get injured, because your speed is building momentum, and that person's mind is like, hey, I just want to block you. And when you collide in the air, either both or one of you are going to get hurt. Instead, why get hurt? Slow down as you get closer to the basket, outwit him, and try to complete it, but also get the foul, and then you're happy about it.
If you watched a Christ the King varsity game, he would just sit there, yell, basket line, the whole game. So now my dad, who's one of my assistants, he's yelling basket line the whole game. And that's the term we use, and you got to get on that side. You got to make the court look crowded. That's high school basketball. If you have to make kids make as many passes as possible, so that kid beats his man, dribble drives, and he's got a kick, I'd much rather that kid kick than get a a shot at the goal. Kick it. They'll throw the ball out of bounds. Sometimes your best defense is you just being there. They'll make a mistake. Those types of things. But our emphasis is always basket line. I've changed. We used to always force away from the basket on the wings to now, and then on the corners, never give up the baseline. That was what we would do. Because what you see now is, we do it too, is that dribble drive baseline and you're throwing opposite corner to that shooter. So you come help, and then that rotation's tough. It can be tough. So I think we kind of I haven't had a shot blocker in a really long time. So guys are going to the basket. I was like, we got to take charges. We got those types of things. So we're coming out more square to the corner.
It's huge. You can't give 100% every day if you're doing it every day. A lot of coaches probably say, or players too, they say no days off, which I was a firm believer of that at first, but now seeing how much basketball now is all year round. And a lot of times, like when we were younger, we probably had probably 2 to 3 weeks between our regular season and our AAU season. Now it's literally right when your regular season ends, you're right into AAU. So with that, I mean, your time span to rest is probably not even 24 hours, depending on what kind of team you're on, or if you're even doing outside training, including that.
Right.
But it's huge. And what I like to do is I give them at least 1 to 2 days, just depending on how extraneous the workout was. And what else they also got going on.
You'd be surprised at how many big time coaches, if given the opportunity, would love to help a high school coach. I reached out, I sat down and came to practices of Coach Weisinger before I joined the staff as a high school coach, even as a sophomore coach back in the day. I brought my sophomore team to practices and games, and I sat down with Wardle and Bargain out at over at Bradley. Just emailed him, hey, I'm running this. I'm looking at running this defense. Would you be willing to sit down and talk? And he came in and Bargain. He up on the whiteboard, he's drawing up, and I'm thinking, and we sat for probably an hour and a half. And he just just what do you want to know? I'll tell you anything. So reach out. You'd be surprised at who would be willing to help you, sit down and talk with you. It's just building your network, and don't sit down and be like, hey, I got this player, I got this player, I got this player. Just talk basketball, have some questions for them. That's the best thing you could do.
Yeah, for the high school level, I think the best thing that a high school coach can do is find a reputable injury prevention program and use it as your warm-up every single day with your team. A program that is going to include a little bit of squatting, a little bit of lunging, probably some bounding and some balance and some single leg deadlifts. There's several programs that are available, and I think a lot of coaches kind of steer away from them because they recognize that it probably is going to take 20 minutes every single day. But are layup lines really that much better? I don't think so. And I don't know that just running up and down the court, other than getting your body warm, makes you move that much better. That if you chose to have your athletes do, jog up and down one time and do some backpedaling and then do 25 squats where you're really working on your form, and then maybe doing some passing drills while you're balancing, I think it's going to have larger carryover versus some of the more traditional circle stretching where the athletes are kind of reaching for their toes and chatting about homework.
Using my example, I stepped into a head coaching role for a community that I was familiar with because I lived in the area, but I wasn't from the community. And so in that instance, the first year or two, you probably just have to make the best of what you have. As you get more invested, then I think you have more opportunities to look and see, okay, this parents, they're volunteering their time. That's awesome, that they're trying, but I have an ex-player now. I have there's a college in town, and there's some college, there's college kids that are looking to get into coaching, and there's different avenues that I could tap into to maybe find someone better maybe not to replace this other coach, but maybe to pair with them, right, and give them some support. Or as you learn about, I mean, there's going to be former coaches in the community that, you know, coached at maybe the JV level or the freshman level that aren't coaching anymore, you know, different things like that. So I always put together a youth program, essentially, you know, a manual for the coaches, and said, hey, you know, by grade level, this is the skills we want to do. Here's a bunch of drills that address those skills.
I think the hardest thing and also the most important thing is in basketball is read whatever you get from the defense. And I thought that would come a little sooner than it really does. It's really hard for kids to see, like, what is my defender doing and what should I take? What is my advantage right now? And when you play a game, for instance, in school, you play at tag, that's the right word, right? Then it's very common sense, like how to not be tagged by the person who's a tagger. But then when we practice a screen, for instance, when we practice a pin down, then it's very hard for them to understand that when your defender goes underneath the screen and you go over the screen, you meet them again. I'm like, when you play tag, you don't do this. Like, you read the screen, your defender is going underneath, so you step out for the shot. And it was weird, not weird, but I had to adapt to it, that sometimes it's so logical and it's just not in their minds yet. And especially with reading the defense, that's something that took a lot longer than I thought it was gonna take.
With a traditional big, so we had a 6'8" post player last year, and he was skinny, and so he had a hard time sealing up the lane, so we couldn't throw it over the top to him. And teams ended up playing behind him and just letting him get the ball because he wasn't able to back them down.
Right.
But what we tried to teach him was sealing up. So like spinning, like trying to get into the body on, say, a rim run, and then spinning either way off of their defender, and then trying to get leverage where they could seal them up the lane towards the free throw line and we could throw it over the top. He wasn't strong enough just to bury his man under the rim, which is, for me, on a rim run, the number one way I would teach it, where you just tee up your defender, get your elbows out, and use your butt to basically show to the ball and show your chest to the ball with your flashers, and sealing right at the rim.
If I was like, my aspirations were here, like my team's aspirations were like way down there. So that would have been a tough balance for him, but definitely like practices could have been more organized, or like could have done more, even just like more skill stuff, and pushed me to do more skill stuff. If you know that the team just doesn't get, like, there's like the part of practice where you go like basketball IQ stuff and run through plays, and my team wasn't super sophisticated to learn a bunch of plays, but could have done more skill stuff and rose their level a little bit, and then I could have pushed myself on my own type thing. I mean, I always was like self-motivated, and it was funny, like he did tell a couple of girls one morning, like, I wanted to go shoot in the morning, and he knew I was always there. He told them to come and shoot with me. They showed up and they didn't want to shoot. They were only there because he told them to, and they rebounded for me for an hour and a half before school, and they didn't even shoot a basketball. So that kind of shows what my team was like they didn't care to get better on their own, but they rebounded for me. So
right, so those are the positives. You know, what growth can still continue, you know, and we've talked about this before, a bunch of us, is, you know, what can we do to continue to help grow the game, you know, within our own Latino community. And again, it's just outreach and reaching coaches all across the country, and for that matter, reaching coaches all across the globe, you know, that can connect with us, and find ways to network, build those relationships, maybe help create opportunities. But a point that was, you know, has been made the past couple years, especially when we get together for our luncheon. You know, we've been fortunate enough to have Frank Martin talk to us. We've been fortunate enough to have, you know, all other Division I head coaches talk to us, you know, of Latino background. But the discussion, though, continues. We need to have people that look like us and can relate to us also be in other positions of power, too.
I think that's one of the first steps that I try to develop now is who are we going to be when things get tough? Who are we going to be when things are not going our way? And I think that sets a great foundation for the rest of it. It helps us, to be better basketball players. It helps us to handle our responsibilities in the classroom better. It also helps us to understand that we do need to depend on one another. So it sets the stage for all the things that we want as coaches, every coach wants a tough team who's going to go out there, play together, take the charges, make the extra pass. Well, if we're not teaching them how to have the mindset to do that, then we're asking too much of them. I think that's where my programs now I'll always start with. I used to think back in the day, like, oh, if I had more talented kids, I'd be a much better coach, right? And then I got the more talented kids, and I coached some really talented teams throughout the years, and some of them were successful and some of them weren't. And it really had nothing to do with the talent. It was always the character. It was always what type of character they were, what type of teammates were they. And I think that's always going to be now, regardless. I mean, I'm sure I'll learn some new things along the way for the next 18 years, but I think character building will always be number one when it comes to program building.
For the most part, we sell out to each other on, okay, how can we make sure that, when we leave a war room, that we're all on the same page and the kids don't ever see us differ outside of when we're there, because I think that's important as well, that we're all on the same page. And so the war room, when I say gets heated, it does, just because, there may be a situation where one of the coaches, they may have a player that wasn't on anybody else's list, and that's their time to defend, debate, and, so at the end of the day, we feel like, when I say collective responsibility, that we've done our due diligence, and every single player that plays has eyes on him, multiple eyes during that tryout. And they have coaches that will defend them, debate them, and then, at the end of the day, when we post a roster, we're okay with that.
And anything that you do, you have to believe in yourself, and you have to have a plan, and you have to, stick to it. You can't panic and keep second guessing yourself all the time. I mean, you have to say to yourself, you were hired for a reason. You made it through an interview process for a reason, and you have to have, something on your resume or in your background where whichever school it is, that you applied to believes in you. And you just have to keep remembering that in your head, and stay optimistic when you're going through tough times, and never let negativity creep into your team, because once it does, it makes it that much harder. And I talk about the first year all the time as being a tough year, but honestly, it could have been the most enjoyable, because I got to watch a group of girls, come closer through really tough times and continue to persevere and continue to push through and not complain and not, start pointing the finger at each other or pointing the finger at the coaches. They stayed united, and now I can tell our girls, they laid the groundwork for this. They just didn't have as much talent as we have now, but they had the work ethic, and they had, the wherewithal to say, this is a good opportunity for us to leave some sort of mark for these younger kids.
And many, many years ago, I was very fortunate that I had a team that was very bright basketball-wise, and putting my motion in normally, takes about a year completely, and this group was able to do it in a half a year, which made us averaging, first part of the year, we're averaging 50 a game, giving up, 30. The second half of the year, we were averaging 80 a game, and giving up 40. So we turned it around, and I think that's the case with any offense. Run that, and the more experience you had. Last year we had a bunch of experienced kids, 2 seniors in the post, a point guard that had some playing time, We didn't have a lot of depth with experience, but our starters were pretty experienced. So putting it in was pretty easy, went pretty fast until we got, with players off the bench, and then we would slow down a little bit. So I think you got to be patient. You got to break it down. You got to start at, points of it. We were doing stuff early in the year, and they didn't even know why we were doing it.
I always call it tightening the screws. I always use the analogy of like a table. A table sits on its legs, it's 4 legs for it to be a table. But the thing that holds it all together most times on most tables are the screws. That if those screws weren't present, the table can no longer be a table.
Right.
It's just a pile of wood. So you've got to kind of hit on those every days, and I really hit on those usually with leadership in mind, and making sure that our seniors and our captains usually are kind of the head of that, and making sure that they go smoothly. It also lets me know too what the locker room standard is, for our guys, in terms of a couple missed layups. Is somebody going to say something, or does coach have to go out there on the court and kind of discipline things? Who's going to kind of take ownership of the floor, because that comes in handy in those tight moments when we're playing in games. So, but that's one huge one that I really have adapted to over the years, that really has been a good vehicle for us to kind of start practices with,
And with my coaching staff too, I tell them all the time, like, we can't tell them to be these things, or, we can't tell the leaders to act like this or like that if we're not going to do the same thing. So, just as I hold the girls accountable to how they behave and things like that, I also hold the coaching staff to those as well. So, if we can't model it, we're not setting the precedent for our program to build that, culture around that. So,
and when it comes to modeling, are there certain behaviors or certain characteristics that when you're modeling them, that you really think about, and you're really like being self-aware about? Like, I know for me as a coach, one of mine is like being on time, but I know I have to think a lot about, okay, I know school just got out, I have X amount of minutes, but all right, if I want to, preach being on time, I got to make sure, like, as best as I can, that I'm at
high school, like I said. And so they shouldn't sell themselves short. And I could use a great example. My brother, he just signed a couple weeks ago to play Division I baseball at the University of Nebraska. And so in high school, I mean, he obviously knew that he was going to go play somewhere for baseball, but all through high school, I mean, he played football up until his freshman year of high school, and he decided to quit football, but he still played basketball because, I mean, he had that love for the game. And so he played basketball and baseball all through high school. Even though he knew he was going to go somewhere and play college baseball, he still played basketball because it got him in great shape to play baseball. He loved the game. He loved playing with his teammates, things like that. So I definitely don't think that there is any reason to just specialize in one sport because that's what you think you might go to college for or anything like that. I definitely don't think that's beneficial to the athlete.
But energy and effort outweighs everything else is number one. And it's like, that's stuff that we can control. And I guess when I came in, and even though we only had, early on 3 or 4 girls at tryouts, or the following year, maybe only 6 or 7 at one time, but it's like, or one time I did a optional weight training and 2 girls came and I ran the weight training, right? And my whole thing is just like, I'm always early to practice. I make sure every girl gets picked up, right? I run our camps. I run these optional weight trainings and cardios and things. And it's just like my whole thing I tried to get across to them. And as I keep telling them, it's like, girls, I'm here. I'm going to put in the effort to be here. I have a practice plan every day. I have, an idea of what we're going to achieve each week. And I'm like, I'm more than willing to put in the time and effort. Like, join me in this. I promise I'll make it fun. I promise I'll make it energetic. But like, if we do this now, it's going to pay dividends. And that's just like what I've tried to get across. And it's like, the girls come in excited for practice, right? The girls come to these optional weight trainings, optional, cardio sessions because it's goofy. We have fun doing it. I play music, but it's like we get after it, but we get after it together, right?
My pass is try to
every kid I come in contact with, I'm trying to get to know them personally. You know, you got to get to know your kids.
Right.
You'll find out so much information, what they want to be, where they trying to go, that type of thing. And then by that, I'm gonna do everything I can to try to help that kid. They reach out to me. Especially with 2020, man, it's been so much going on that you don't know where the kids are coming from, like the backgrounds, the housing situations, the parent situations. So when they come to school, I'm trying to, make it fun for them to come to school.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, there's a time to say, hey, we need to do this. We need to be serious about a situation. And there's a time to discipline kids for certain actions. But I feel like, we need to, try to make the kids feel welcome and make their experience a great one in the way that we can.
No, I can always just look at how the players carry themselves and how they act on the court. And I normally can tell in warm-ups if a program is something that is going to be extremely successful or not. For example, we ran a tournament for the high school girls team, and so we ran a tournament, and so I was in the gym for 2 whole days, not coaching, but just kind of walking around, making sure everything was running smoothly. And so I got to sit and watch other teams and just stuff that you just hear and that you take in. You're like, wow, like this guy is coaching. But then you have other ones where you're like, okay, I like that. This guy is going to be able to take his program to different levels. It's just basically just what you see as far as how the kids act and respond in certain ways. You can tell, okay, this organization is going to be really good, and this is good for kids. And then you can tell, okay, well, this probably isn't the best situation for kids, or this person is probably not the best person to be coaching our youth at this time.
Mm-hmm.
I cared a lot about our bench energy. And if there were kids who were sitting there who were either sulking because they weren't happy with their own performance, they thought they should have been in the game, whatever the case might have been, like, you clap for the girls who are on the floor at any point in time. It doesn't matter if we're up 20, down, whatever the case is, we bring the same amount of energy on the bench. Everyone gives, we call them touches, high fives. No one is too good to do those things. I think another one is just running in and out of the game. And it's funny you say this because there's obviously, I was telling you kind of about the different levels, and that presents different challenges.
Mm-hmm.
I had a 5th grade AAU team with Empire last year. And I had one kid walk into the game, her shirt was untucked, and the other kid walked right out of the game. They didn't speak, and they were just subbing. And I called a timeout, and I ripped them. And I had a kid on the team who, sweetest little thing, raised her hand. It's like, I don't understand why you're mad. I was like, because we run places. You're excited to go into the game. Kids send you out, you sprint off the floor.
Is you got to kind of, fight fire with fire. So if a team's really athletic and they like to get up and down the floor, the first thing I like to do is put a press on. And we might do 2 different variations of presses. And then we might just run into a zone. So I might do like a 1-2-2 zone press. And then when they get over half court, we'll just fall into a 3-2. Or we might do a diamond press. And then when they get over half court, fall into a 1-3-1. Because I rather, have kids, and our goal on the press isn't to get steals. The opportunity is there, we'll take it. But the goal of the press is to just keep the other team in front of you. Just keep them at bay. Don't let a kid dribble all the way up the sideline, or don't let someone dribble right through the middle of the press and get the ball up court really fast so they can pass up and take an easy layup on us. We just want to keep them in front of us and make them have to pass through our press.
And he can make a play in the open court and get something going from there. If that front is not so great, those are behind him. That kind of disrupts the flow, and now we got to get in the half court. So for us, it's really it is a lot of transition passing, knowing different reads, and what that falls again on my point guard. He's kind of the orchestrator. He has to read the floor. He kind of has to, it all starts there. And his job is, to me, it's the most important because he's me on the floor. He's the coach on the floor. So there's stuff that I'm going to see that I expect him to see the same thing once he catches that outlet, and it got to be a quick decision. You know, it has to be a very, very quick decision on what you're going to do, and then we get in, we go, and then when we get in the half court, and I stress also a quick decision. I tell you, you have 1 second to decide what you're going to do. If you're going to pass, shoot, dribble.
Mm-hmm.
If you're on the ball for more than 1 second, you're holding it too long.
It's all about, hey, that's fine. You look at it more as a change of possession, right? Okay, we're getting the ball back now. I got to do my job. I got scored on. Shucks. Let me grab this, get the ball out, get it up to the point guard as fast as I can, and let's just go get another one on the other end. Mm-hmm. And that's tough to teach, especially high school kids. And it was tough for me to teach 9th grade kids to accept that, right? And just say, I just keep getting scored on. I keep getting scored on. You know what? That's not necessarily the worst thing, because it creates another possession for us in the way we play. A successful defensive possession for us is having a good chance at a steal. If we have a good chance at a steal, that's a good possession for us. If we have a good chance at a steal and get scored on in 8 seconds, we're trying to get a change of possession in 10 seconds or less. We fit that quota. That's fine. We had a good chance at a steal. They got a bucket. Let's get it out from under the bucket. Let's get it up, and let's go get a 3.
A couple things. One, as the year goes on, we shorten practice. As games we're on, kids get tired. So we shorten practice as the season goes on. Obviously, we should need 2 hours for practice, because this is practice 37 and we've been through this stuff. So that helps when we shorten practice. Another thing we do too is we have this biofeedback. It's just a quick little questionnaire. How much sleep did you get? Are you sore or hurt? There's a difference. How you feeling today health-wise? Hydration levels, and then on a scale of 1 to 5, are you green? I'm good to go, or 2 I'm in the red, and then we kind of talk about who's in the red or who's in the green individually. And as a group too, if we're all in the green, we're going at it today. Sure. If our guys are kind of in the red or orange area, it's well, let's take it back a little bit, maybe shorten practice or take off this live segment just to make sure we're ready to go for our upcoming game schedule, wherever it may be.
So I have to make sure when I look at these young players, who's influencing these young players?
Sure.
And that, because the older players, they've been through there. Usually if you're a junior or senior with me, you've come through the program, so you kind of understand what I expect. So if it's just a kid that's coming in, if my upperclassmen aren't holding them accountable, then I have to, Yeah. And then it's all about protecting the babies. I'm always looking, because if these kids are going to come up through my program, I need for people to lead them the right way, in a positive. So, I can be honest. I haven't had, I probably can count on maybe 3 or 4 kids that were kind of, negative influences, and they never lasted. They didn't. And, it is, and I still have a relationship with them. They respect me. It's just one of those things that I tell them, this is my job, and I have to make sure that I maintain this experience for all of the kids in our program.
Right. We talk about it a ton. What we want if we're down. We're taking into possession at a time, and I'll tell you what we want when we're down is we want the clock to stop. So we want to get to the free throw line. We want to put them in the penalty. We want to get their players out of the game. So we're not of the mindset of let's fall down 8 or 10 and we're in a huge hurry. We want to slowly chip away, but we also have, calls and sets that we'll run for our best players, just like anybody else, where we're going to put you in an ISO situation, or we're going to put our 2 best players in a ball screen, and we need to get a bucket. And so, rather than, letting the game go and go and go, we might go 3 or 4 minutes without a bucket. We're intentional about, we're going to call out this set to stop this run, to get us a bucket. And, rather than me burning a timeout, we just know, all right, we're down 8. We don't want this to get to 14 or whatever the score may be. We need to get the ball here to this player, and she's going to either get us a bucket or get us a great shot, drawing a help defender, or she's going to get us to the free throw line, all of which are things that we want.
I didn't have to do that, because I was in my apartment all day, and that can be very draining. And I know that if I'm going through this, my players are going through this, other people are going through this, so I have to find a way to set the example, and also again be very transparent with my team. Like, hey, sometimes you might say that you're going to get this, and that accomplished in the day, and if you don't, that's okay. Don't beat yourself up if you set aside a day to work out. I'm going to work out for 30 minutes today, or I'm going to get this assignment done that's not due till next week. I'm going to get it done today. If you can't because of your mental health or because of whatever else is going on, don't beat yourself up about it, and just try again the next day, kind of thing.
That whole process, I still think of so many times where I would go, okay, well, I got this 6'4" kid he's okay, and I'm gonna run him out there at my 4 so I can have some size. When now that I'm looking at it 10 years removed from that team, you go, we probably would have been better having him being the backup center and bring another ball handler and another guard in there, and making us a little more athletic and a little better ball handling, a little more shooting, a little more, just basketball IQ-ish type stuff in terms of playing out on the perimeter. But I never would, because you get so enamored thinking I'm gonna give up, I'm gonna get killed on the backboards, and people are gonna wear me out on the post, and that's going to happen. I think that's the thing you're gonna have to just bite the bullet and accept, and that is, if you're an undersized team, there are going to be times when you're going to get hammered on the backboard because you're just so little compared to some of the other people you might play. But what you try to do is come up with styles and philosophies and adjustments, that in-game adjustments that you can make to maybe neutralize some of that.
And that's how we did get a lot of our equipment. Other coaches knew me and knew how hard I wanted to make sure my players had a thing that they didn't have. And financially, we just couldn't combine at that time. So I reached out to other guys who I know was my mentors, like I said, like Coach Good, Coach Rob, and they gave me basketballs, equipment, and honestly, they helped me fundraise and helped me show me the way. Because like I said, it was my first year as a head coach. I only been coaching for 3 years, and I've been in high school for 2. I only been a head for 1 year, going to my second year now. So I was new to a lot of things.
Is we play very fast. We like to play fast. I want to score in under 7 seconds if possible. We play a very aggressive type of zone defense. We actually run 4 different zones during a game based off a color system. But, to me, because we play so fast, it also lends itself a little bit to playing a lot of players. Mm-hmm. But I also think it has to do a lot with player development. We want to develop all of the players, within our program to be able to play more players. I think as a coach, this will be my 5th year. I think by your 5th, 6th, 7th year, I think player development is a major deal in being able to play more players. And the last piece I would say is it's about understanding player strengths.
And it's by honestly seeing some success, but at the same time, I had to gain confidence that I knew what I was talking about. I knew what I was doing. Seeing kids get better at it and seeing programs get better and grow, I think really was something that I had to seize time and trusting that you can't be good at everything in this. And you got to identify what you feel good about, what your kids can do, and then you got to stick with that. And if you're going to change it, you got to make sure that that you're willing to live with the fact that when you change something like that, you're kind of getting rid of a long segment of what you've done and who you are. Yeah. And that's tough, Coach. Like you said, the only way I got through that was failing. And, and I failed, and man, we threw, you probably would not be able to identify what offense or defense we were in at the end of the year, because we probably ran through the whole YouTube selection, or that was a little before Twitter, or before Twitter was big, I guess. But
so we started doing it this way 2 years ago. Mm-hmm. And it was something that the girls actually built. And so before kind of, in our preseason meetings, so on and so forth, we kind of talked about goals and what we wanted to do. And it was actually kind of something that they sort of came up with on their own. So the buy-in kind of was there. And so then that next year, we kind of had a little bit of a different group, wasn't so into the film. But we got about like halfway through the season, and some of the girls were like, I think we want to go back to that. And so looking forward, now it's not necessarily going to be a optional thing anymore for me, because I really enjoyed it. And I think that even the kids that didn't necessarily enjoy it as much, I think they recognized the value of it when we didn't do it.
Like I was telling you earlier, we also do where we really simplify it. If we play a team, and this isn't every team, but most high school teams, we find they'll have one or maybe two kids that play a lot that can't shoot from the outside. And if we run into teams like that we scout, and usually it's a big man, which makes it easy because then you automatically have help side. You have someone in the middle that can help.
Sure.
But if there's a guard type player who is a perimeter player, but they don't shoot above 30% or they shoot poorly out there, then you're just kind of an all-time helper. And you can help with the post, you can help with the stud perimeter player, and there's rules that come with that, like you're expected to rebound very well and do things like that. But we kind of think of it as playing 5-on-4 or 5-on-3 sometimes.
And just different ways, like we know, a lot of teams using screens and who you're guarding. If you need to make sure you get your butt over top of that screen instead of going under, because they're going to shoot it every single time. And, we got to drill that over and over. So they when they're in that moment, they already know what's expected of them. And basically we also put a lot of emphasis on keeping people out of the middle. So out of every set, making sure you're forcing people baseline, making sure you keep your feet moving with a high hand, knowing where the help is going. If you get beat, don't ride their hip, let the help come over in the rotation. But all of that is more like cohesion, right? And teams communicating. So that's something that we do all year long. So then when we plug it into our defensive game plan, it's more like, how are we matching people up and giving them jobs to be as successful as we want to be?
And we're doing shell. We're forcing sideline, baseline, keeping the ball out of the middle. We put a huge emphasis on help side. So if the ball's not on your side, you need to be 2 feet in the paint. And even we talk about straddling the rim on, looking at the rim on the other end and being that far over and help, and then trusting your closeouts. We still work a ton on two-handed closeouts. You'll see that our girls in our zones are going to close out with 2 hands. It's not just a one little hand or running at you. We work every day on 2-hand closeouts. So that's no different in teaching when we talk about man-to-man, because we emphasize the help so much that we need to race out and break down with 2 high hands on a closeout. So ball side pressure, on the line, up the line, those are all principles that we work on when we work on man-to-man.
They're so creative, and they got so many more ways to get better than we did when I was younger. Traps to these kids nowadays are easy to break if they're not perfect. And you're not going to have perfect traps. So like you said, you're going to pull your hair out. The time I pull my hair out is when a guy's not giving me all he can in this thing. If you're not giving me all you can, why are we out here doing this? Why am I prepping you for you to do this? And that's the quickest way for me to get a guy on the bench on my teams is if you're not going hard, you're not going to play. You've got to be a guy that's going to go hard all the time for us to be successful. We may not be the most talented team, but man, you got to win every 50-50 ball. You got to do it all for us to put us in a situation to win. And that goes with our traps. Like I said, going hard, knowing your personnel out there. Sometimes you can't overextend in your traps, and you just got to know who you're going against.
Crazy. And it's not just talking for making noise. I've heard teams that think they talk and they just make noise. You can't understand whatever they're saying. It's just junk, basically. So I throw that stuff away. But we try to speak not just, don't want to say complete sentences, but in stuff that people can understand, and then responding to those things as well, as far as where to push the ball screen or things like that, and then they have to respond, because we don't just talk, we communicate, and communication is a two-way street. Someone talks, someone listens, and then it goes back and forth. So I can really see how into the game those guys are and how they're talking. That's a big thing with our cutthroat drill.
Oh, definitely not. And that's something, you know, we emphasize all the time is like, we want the game to be as chaotic as we can possibly get it. And so to do that, we can't have anybody, we talk about bouncing all the time. We're always on our toes bouncing. We should never be flat-footed. And that's a big reason why is we attack all the time, and we want, even on reversals, we want a second trap if we can get it. And you know, we spend a lot of time selling that to the girls, because really when you face a trapping defense, most of the time it's just the strong side trap. They get it on that one side, and if you can reverse it, then you've got something good. Well, we really try to emphasize, you know, teams are going to reverse it, but hopefully we're quick enough that when they reverse it, they're reversing it into another trap, and that can surprise them. And that's kind of our goal there. But definitely the more active you are, the better.
Honest conversations, and they don't need to be demeaning. They don't need to be negative. They don't need to be, you don't need to be the biggest jerk in the room or anything. It's just because you care, because you've studied and put in the time on their game and are trying to figure out how they can be the best them. We're going to have an honest conversation. How do we do that where we're not getting kids to hate us, right? Mm-hmm. So this is where the little document we talked about our offensive player types.
Yeah.
Now this is where, as a coach, I'm cheating, right? I'm positionless, but here we have player types. Where we try to get guys to understand is we've broken them down into 4 things, very broad, but we say, okay, there's on-ball perimeter players, there's off-ball perimeter players, there's on-ball bigs, and there's off-ball bigs. And what gets guys to kind of understand, like, that's where your strengths are. Mm-hmm. We use just simple connections to NBA guys.
We kind of work our way out. We do a good job earlier in the season, especially at stopping it when it's not quote unquote perfect, right? I mean, we're trying to, you know, make sure that we have a solid understanding of how we want things. You know, we'll do individual stuff, a lot more footwork and that kind of stuff in the summer, in the fall. You know, and during the season, there's just not enough time. So, you know, we'll do our specific warm-ups, getting their feet going. But in the end of the day, you know, that stuff has been done a lot more in the off season. And so, you know, but in terms of defensive philosophy, I mean, we're looking for 3 stops in a row and kills and, you know, all the stuff that is pretty common right now in terms of just, you know, understanding what we want to do defensively. And, you know, like I said, too, it really results back to the fact that we watch so much film on it. You know, every game, you know, I'll put up 5 or 6, you know, good and bad defensive clips of, you know, how we did a good job of this and how we could be better. And, you know, it seems to work for the group that we have. And, you know, I put an emphasis on.
I think that it's a multi-step process to get kids to buy in, especially this generation. When I was growing up, you either did what the coach said or you weren't around. And this generation, and I love it, and I tell them all the time, they are one of the most important ones because they ask why. Now, there's a time to ask why, and there's a time to just do it. But this generation, if you can relate to them and they see that you're genuine in what you say and what you do, I think that a lot of them will jump through a wall for you. And if you can get one to do it, then everybody's going to follow. It always just takes one. And we did push tryouts the other day. And in this gym, we've got kids from DC all the way to North Carolina and some very, very high-level basketball players. I'm the only short, white, fat guy in the gym. And I joke around about that all the time. And the kids are looking at me like, a lot of them know who I am, but they don't because they know me through social media. That's another way to do it too. Coaches, it's not a bad thing.
I actually reached out to him a couple years ago, and I just happened to have his number still stored in my phone, and I reached out to him and started looking up some of the things that he's been doing. So me and my assistant, we've began to look at our offense, and it just kind of slowly, I haven't say that we completely went away from flex because we still may use it, and we have since we try to transition into a more free-flowing offense. But for the most part, we've tried to combine this dribble drive with this motion offense. And it's right now, it's a little bit more dribble drive than I'd like, but offensively, our guys love it. They love the freedom. And I think when you give kids the freedom to fail, they play a little bit more loose. It's almost like they're playing pickup out there right now. And I don't really have to call a whole lot of sets. And the offensive production has jumped up maybe 10 or 15 more points than we usually score.
You know, my comments or coaching, I guess, at that point, if I'm watching them take care of their own, so to speak. And just generally for us, when I have kind of brainwashed our kids in terms of, you know, we're not running offensive sets or anything like that, whether it be read and react or anything else. We're not doing that to make me feel good or show people that I can make you run an offense. We're just simply doing this for scoring opportunities. And so unless there's a specific time in the game where we got to, you know, run the clock out a little bit or what have you, you know, if we get a good look off the first pass, or if it's fast break or whatever it may be, that's an opportunity for us. And if it's a good one, we're going to take it. And so, you know, we try to run fast, and we play, I call it controlled chaos. You know, we want to run as long as it makes sense and it's a wise basketball play, you know, but these guys know that if I cut hard and I get open, you know, and make that layup right away, then great. You know, that's what we're looking for.
You have your lanes. You know, if someone's open ahead of you, that one, they can catch and shoot from three, great. Or if they have a chance to catch it, put it on the floor, and lay it up within 2 dribbles, you need to make that pass. And so, as much as I want to sit here and say, hey, we're looking to score every break, it's not happening every break. But you do want to run your lanes, you know, as best as you can and as deep as you can to try to flatten out that defense, and then have the trail shot or the penetrating kick. So we're looking to get an opportunity to score, but I'm not forcing it on my guards or my players to look up. I've seen teams run the sideline break. I like it. I think it looks cool. I think it's effective at times, and you do need to have those scenarios where, hey, we're gonna get out here, we're gonna pitch it, we're gonna have this person cut across the floor. I don't do that every time. Maybe I haven't grown there yet, but if I have a good ball handler, hey, if you can pitch it ahead and someone has something, great. If not, you need to take it and try to get a foot in the paint.
5 out. I've never been a component. I look at what do we have, who do we have coming back, what are their strengths, and what are we going to do offensively or defensively to make them excel. And so honestly, after looking at our film all year, and so it's like, okay, I think we have 4 of our 5 starters coming back. We have 5 of our top 6 players coming back. And then, you know, there's always potential for transfers and stuff, and you never know that until the next season or until summer ball starts and somebody moves in. But right now, I'm completely open to whatever is going to be helpful for us. Now, offensively, I think we can do a lot of the same stuff because we have a girl named Peyton Hymas who she's coming back for her 4th year on varsity. She just got 4A SIC Conference Player of the Year. She was first team All Idaho, and a lot of the offense is gonna run through her.
They know that max effort is all the time. There is not a time in practice that you can relax. You know, they can't sit down. They can't shoot the bull with a guy beside them. We're talking about when we talk to one, we're talking to all. And I may recognize something that's going on, and I may call that kid out and put him out on the floor and tell him that we need him to do something. So, you know, if they know that they have to be on their toes all the time, they're going to give you back what you give them. And you have to be very consistent with recognizing maximum effort and fake effort. It's body language is something that I'm very conscious of during practice. I'm very conscious of what happens when a kid gets knocked on the floor. You know, we are big on going and getting our guys up.
I kind of flipped my lid. I looked at the team, and I had a kid that said, well, this is how I was taught to do it last year. And I said, well, I'm teaching you to do it a different way. We're not a 5-22 team. And that's why you went 5-22 last year, is you hit rotations that were not working to you as an individual player. And that didn't work for the 5 people on the court. It was very chaotic. They learned to play fast pace, and they tried. I'll give it to them. They tried, and if anything else, they paid attention to what they were supposed to do, and if that's what they were taught to do, so be it. But I was not teaching it like that, and so I had that come to Jesus meeting of, this is what we're gonna do. This is how I'm gonna do it, and if you're not gonna do it, there's the door. And that kind of got some kids to shut up really quick. And I don't think I heard for the rest of the season that this is how we did it last year.
Hard work and consistent repetition. You got to shoot 200 to 300 makes every single day consistently. So it really starts with the player wanting to become a shooter. And we've had some guys like that. Our highest shooting player was a kid named Quinn Davis, who came into us, and he shot 43% from the field, and he really has come a long way in his jump shot. And how we did that was just focusing on the fundamentals and being disciplined, because a lot of kids, you'll show them the right way to shoot, and once they start missing it, because you're going to regress, this is the old saying I say, you take one step forward to take 10 steps forward. One step backwards to take 10 steps forward on your jump shot. You gotta when you change those fundamentals in that form, it's really gonna break down. You're gonna get worse, but after you stick with it, you're gonna have a jump. Like, you're gonna jump immediately.
Right. No, yeah, I think it's good, and you can use it. I've used it for like the most minute things in the world. Like we were doing just the other day in AAU practice. We were working on like our screens and our pick and roll game, and the one thing that the kids don't do a really good job of, like anyone, whether it's my most skilled to my least skilled, is we don't set the pick and roll up the right way. We don't get on level. We don't set it up. And so one of the things I got from a coaching buddy of mine this summer is set up the screen by either dribbling away from it, making a pass fake away from it, so you set your defender up, and then go off of it. So what we did was we did a small-sided game, 3-on-3, and if you got a point, if you set the screen up the right way, you got a point if you came off of it and made the right read. And then we wanted to still hit the lift guy because we struggle with that. So if you hit the lift guy and got a 3 off of it, you got 3 points.
Philosophies on just catch everything with 2 hands and 2 feet, and emphasizing it in practice, right? On 2 feet. So girls will laugh at this because I said it all the time, like on 2 with 2, always. Like, they catch the ball on 2 with 2, And by game 10, they were making fun of me every so often by saying that. But
hey, they remembered it.
That's right, exactly. It's all we want, right? So just little things like that, and then really emphasizing it. I think that helps. And then I think just like, doing, like you said, so over emphasizing it, but then also simulating some game-like drills, right? So instead of going 5-on-5, you have the pressing team with a 6 person, right? Or we run, I got John Beeline had a drill that we used a lot in the second half, the second half of the season, which is just, it's literally just, you're outnumbered, right? You're like 4-on-5 in the half court. And the goal is to possess the ball for 20 seconds or hit the ball to the middle and get it back out of the middle.
To go along with what you're saying, my first year, I won 3 games. Mm-hmm. And one of the players that I did have, who probably could help me take me from 3, probably 10 plus, I lost him because he couldn't meet my expectations. But if you are a first-year coach, you're trying to turn the program around from a loser program to a winning program, you're going to have to take those bumps and bruises that comes along with it to get the program to be where you want it to be. Mm-hmm. So either you're going to let the parents or the players push over you, and you're not going to get what you want at the end of the day down the road, or you're going to take the bumps and bruises now to understand, okay, I'm going to take the bumps and bruises now to get to where I want to be, to lay the ground, like to lay the foundation. You know what I'm saying? So he was by far my first year, by far my best player, skill-wise, athleticism, but I lost him. But at the end of the day, I'm winning right now because the players and the parents realize, okay, he's not serious. Like, he's very serious with what he's doing. He means what he say. And at the end of the day, I went from 3 games. I went from 8 games. And then I had my best season my 3rd year. And it's just, so it sucks, but in the day, it's what you have to do.
Thank you for listening to another edition of the Basketball Teacher Podcast. Make sure to connect with us on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, or reach us directly through email at basketballteacherpodcast@gmail.com. Take care, be safe, and we'll see you next time.